financially, militarily. We are heading towards water shortage. We are looking toward water resources. Each country is trying to do its best for its people, and in that gamut, some people take extreme steps. Though may not be right.
All right, we're going to have a lot more to discuss. Discussing whether the WikiLeaks revelations are a boon or a bane. But before we proceed further, here is what journalists think of WikiLeaks.
See, WikiLeaks is it's a very good thing that we've seen in the last few days or the last few weeks. If we can have sting operations and if we have investigative journalism, why can't we have WikiLeaks? After all, what is the purpose of WikiLeaks? The purpose has been to expose the doublespeak, what has been hidden in the files of governments, what senior politicians, senior diplomats have been saying in private. They have been saying one thing publicly and saying the other thing privately. I think it's a great kind of journalism where the truth has come out.
I must say that it's the government's job to keep secrets and for journalists to expose those. And so therefore I would rather like to defend WikiLeaks, and this is certainly going to change journalism to a certain extent, that governments will have to be more careful of what they are saying, what they are doing, what they are pretending to do, or what they are actually doing. So I think it's certainly a good development, and future governments and diplomats and everyone will have to be more careful in what they actually perceive and what they actually do.
Very honestly, I don't think it is something very path-breaking, in the sense that journalists, ever since journalism has been practiced, have been taking a lot of backdoor entry to get information. It is only for the past, at least in India, it's only for the past about 7 years, 6-7 years that we have seen the right to information and people are actually getting information. Before that, people were taking a back route entry to get information. So I think it's perfectly justified, and in order to get something as big as the WikiLeaks, I really appreciate Assange.
Well, I think all three journalists kind of agreed that it is perfectly justified whatever WikiLeaks has done. Ms. Khosla, what is your take? Should journalists use such raw information in the manner in which they are using it?
No, because raw information, by the very definition of the word, is raw. And when something is raw, let's say it's not fit to be consumed. Animals consume raw meat. And if I look at it in terms of information, this is absolutely raw. It needs to be processed, and by processed I mean according to the rules and regulations of society. The fact that we have various laws, the fact that we have various ethical codes, all that is to determine.
But by that yardstick, Ms. Khosla, what the journalist should have done is, this is the information that WikiLeaks has given to you. You should go back to governments and say that, is this right or wrong?
See, when we are talking about freedom of speech and expression, if it was really supposed to be a free-for-all, if it was really supposed to be that, okay, in a country of 1 billion odd people, everybody is supposed to have their say, then we won't have those reasonable restrictions. There is a logic.
Yes, but Mr. Chadha, do you think the media could avoid using this information? I mean, it is there in the public domain now.
No, see, you can debate whether WikiLeaks was right in obtaining the information in the manner that they did and in putting it out in the public domain. But I don't think you can fault anybody for publishing it. That's the job of a journalist, and I don't fault you, for example, in your news to pick up those parts of the WikiLeaks revelations.
Also, Sada, you would agree that one country may not use it, but another country will. I mean, this information is available all over the world. China hasn't used some part of the information.
No, China is a closed society. I mean, China is not an open society, so they can regulate the flow of information in the manner that they have done, but every country can't. And you have to distinguish between what governments do with it and what media does with it. Now, as far as media is concerned, I don't fault the media.
But Ms. Khosla says that using raw information is like animals eating raw meat.
Well, okay, so who is going to analyze it? It is a job of the media. That's the note of caution I sounded in my very opening remarks. You have this information, by all means use it, but cautiously.
No, I wonder, when we are talking about the 4 pillars of society, we each have a distinctive role. When we are talking about parallel trial by media, when we are talking about, Mr. Naveen Garewal had talked about sting journalism. If sting journalism was really 100% right, how come it is being regulated now? We have more instances of it being misused and abused rather than there being any public interest involved.
So
when we are talking about credentials, I would like to question that the media which is supporting Assange, have you really looked at his credentials? I mean, if you really look at his history, of course we say that let's not judge a person by his past record. Where is his credibility? When we are talking about, I mean, do we really call it journalism? In fact, like he's drawn an analogy with the fact that, journalism, he talks about it as scientific journalism. He says that what I'm giving out is data supporting my story. That it's like a physics paper.
But Ms. Khosla, don't you think that when countries attack another country, we've had the example of United States attacking Iraq, because they thought that they have weapons of mass destruction, which actually they did not have. So don't you think in that sense this kind of information coming out in the public domain is justified?
No, what attack? I mean, for instance, when we are talking about WikiLeaks being so big, have we really sat and analyzed just how big is it? I mean, the fact that Hillary Clinton said something, or the fact that some Saudi sheikh somewhere is having an affair somewhere, just how important is that?
Well, this is how actually wars start, really, Ms. Khosla.
Yes, wars start, but then how do wars stop also? The fact that we've had a kind of an uneasy truce with Pakistan for so long is because of diplomacy, it is because of dialogue. And when you have such irresponsibility when it comes to information, in fact, I would think that this kind of a thing can trigger wars. I mean, I'm feeling as an Indian, I'm feeling kind of embarrassed that,
well, whether they can trigger wars or prevent wars is again debatable. General Harbhajan Singh, what is your take? Should the journalists use this kind of information which may or may not have an interest on the national security?
This information is now on the World Wide Web. What everybody is doing is analyzing it. What so-and-so said, what is the context, is it still valid? The journalists can also analyze it and write some articles on it. That's all that can be done. But as I said, these are now old informations. This is not the current information.
And this another word that has been used here, feasting.
Feasting, yes.
We have about Guardian, we've got New York Times, we've got 2-3 other papers. It's a cartel. They are deciding that, okay, we've got these bunch of cables. What section are we going to release when? I mean, they are manipulating. They are manipulating the psyche of the media consumer also.
They are playing by some rules of the game at least.
They have their own vested interests.
Okay, Mr. Serene, for some time we've had the alternate media, the internet, and also the social kind of networking sites. So with all this happening, do you think the alternate media, which is the internet and the social networking sites, are there to stay?
Most definitely. By just judging from the popularity in a very short span of time, the sheer number of people who are involved in a social network, suppose take example of Facebook, everyone wants to be heard, their opinion they need to share. But if you were to take it in relation, in context to WikiLeaks, the sole aim is in fact to leak, and the sources are very questionable. They are not being able to justify as to who is disgruntled, say in the CIA or FBI, maybe put on some tenure leave and whatnot, and is disgruntled with the government and now starts giving this earth-shattering revelations about what he was doing prior to his suspension or whatnot.
But if you give out so many documents, I'm sure various facets of governance come out, no?
But who's to judge that? That is the whole issue involved here, is the intent of what part you take out and actually reveal and what part you feel is not relevant
what
anymore.
Comes out here is that the public is to judge what is right and wrong.
And taking up on what Kabir is saying about intent, now this footage which WikiLeaks has about this Apache helicopter, gunning down these non-armed combatants in Iraq. This is the version that the video footage which is available on the site. But the full footage shows that the combatants, supposedly unarmed, had actually rifles. But that footage was not shown.
Okay, so if full footage is given out, then maybe some of this can be.
Yes, one can have an educated.
But Ms. Khosla, do you think this is going to redefine journalism, the traditional journalism that we have followed all this while?
It is going to redefine it, because I think so far that we are not being able to grasp the change that information technology is going to bring about and has brought out in all our lives. So the issue today is in terms of media management, is in terms of being able to handle what IT is doing. And the fallout of this is, let's look at the positive fallout. We need to have a better framed Whistleblowers Act. We need to, the information vacuum that is there, we need to know how to...
Whistleblowers Act at the international level.
Internationally,
this is not concerning India really.
In India, we still haven't got around to having one. despite Satyendra Dubey and despite so many incidents.
WikiLeaks is primarily going to affect how the governance, the diplomacy is going to have some impact on that. But it will be temporary, I think.
Yes, I think in some ways it kind of makes the job of the diplomats quite difficult now.
Yes.
No, in some ways it makes it easier also.
Okay.
You see, because there is no revelation about anything that an Indian diplomat has said. we have now obtained information which we may or may not have had earlier. And of course, if we have to analyze it properly, we can't take it at its face value. But it is added to our store of information, so it makes our job, in a sense, it makes it
Let
easier.
me ask you something which is not exactly related to what we are discussing. Now, WikiLeaks editor-in-chief, Julian Assange, has been arrested. Now, by Indian standards, these look like trumped-up charges. He's been arrested for not exactly sexual assault, but carrying out the sexual act in an improper manner. What is your take on this?
There is no question about that. I mean, we have read details about the basis of these accusations. But we cannot judge people by Indian standard. Why should we? He will be judged by the standards of the countries which are involved. There is Sweden, there is United States, there is Britain.
And by their law.
There are three countries involved. And I don't know how this charge can stick, and in what court he will be tried, in Sweden, in Britain, where he was arrested, or in US.
So all this raises a number of legal issues. So Kabir, tell us, should he be or can he be extradited to Sweden, where he is facing the sexual assault charge?
You see, his whole agency or how he is leaking information has absolutely nothing to do with some sexual assault charges against him. Now, what is being determined in Sweden is whether or not he should be extradited further to ensure that he is answerable for these charges against him. Until and unless those charges are in fact dropped or found, well, how it was put earlier, like they're trumped up, until that's determined, no one can really comment. It has absolutely nothing to do with WikiLeaks, though of course it seems fairly lame and intentional.
Now various countries would be gunning for him. He must have violated the Official Secrets Act in one place, the Espionage Act in another country. So what do you think is going to happen to him?
I would think that he's going to be in a lot of courts, and he's going to be answerable to a number of people for a long period of time.
That raises another issue. Can a lawbreaker catch a lawbreaker?
Exactly.
Can a lawbreaker catch a lawbreaker?
So who is the lawbreaker in the first place here?
That's what we have to question. Do we take the moral high ground? Who is the lawbreaker here?
Okay, thank you very much for joining us in this discussion. Whether you like it or not, WikiLeaks is sure to redefine not just the way countries conduct diplomacy, but also how countries keep their secrets. Media houses are today reveling in the flood of information. But will this form of information spillage sound the death knell of traditional journalism? That is the big question that we journalists face today. With that, we end this edition of Day and Night Prime. We meet again tomorrow with another issue. Till then, good luck and goodbye.